Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the November 19th, 2025 Worcester Township Board of Supervisors business meeting. Would you please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? My name is Rick DeLello. I'm the chairman of the board. To my left is Lou Betts, who's our vice chair. To my right is Steve Quigley, who is our third member. Over on the side table, we have Nicole from our township office, who is our finance director, and we have Wendy McKenna, who is our township solicitor. On the back table, we have Christian Jones, who's our assistant township manager, and Dan Domino, who is our township manager. First and foremost, does anybody have any informational items for the board?
Yes, Mr. Chair, this meeting is being recorded for future broadcast.
Sounds good. We're also going to be having a short presentation in the informational items section of our meeting for a budget presentation that Dan Domino is going to run through, and then we will proceed to public comment and the official action items. So Dan, the floor is yours.
I want to welcome everybody to our budget presentation for the 2026 budget. Just a quick housekeeping item. This is basically what we're going to see as far as slides. Nothing too mind-blowing there. All right, so just a quick executive summary of the budget before I let our finance director kind of get into the nuts and bolts of things. As the Commonwealth ends another budget impasse and the federal government recovers from yet another shutdown, Worcester Township continues to demonstrate that effective, responsible government still exists closest to the people. While higher levels of government struggle with gridlock and debt, Worcester continues to plan, budget, and deliver essential services without disruption. 2026 budget includes no new taxes. This is proof that stable, transparent management can balance community needs with fiscal restraint. Revenues remain steady, driven by a strong local economy and responsible budgeting. Expenditures are focused on core responsibilities of government, maintaining safe roads, protecting neighborhoods, managing growth, and preserving open space. Investments continue in infrastructure, stormwater improvements, and park enhancements, supported by dedicated reserves and without the use of one-time revenues or new debt. National and state governments struggle to even meet basic deadlines. Worcester Township continues to deliver efficient services to its residents. 2026 budget reflects what responsible and accountable governance looks like at a local level. With that, I'm going to bump it over to Nicole, our finance director, to get into some of the nuts and bolts there.
The 2026 budget includes no new taxes and no increase to existing taxes. Worcester Township's real estate tax rate is proposed to remain at 1/20th of 1 mil, which is presently the lowest municipal real estate tax rate in Montgomery County. At this time, the Public Works Director doesn't believe an additional full-time laborer will be needed in the coming year. Our current complement of full and part-time employees will meet our needs in 2026. Likewise, an additional employee isn't needed in the admin department, thanks in large measure to our staff who have worked very hard to make operations more effective and efficient. As to services, there is no substantive change to the township provided services in the coming year. So what we're doing today, we'll continue to do tomorrow. As to the general fund, first and foremost, this is balanced. At this time, EIT, our primary revenue, is projected to receive $3.7 million in 2026. The budget includes $300,000 in real estate transfer taxes in the coming year. $525,000 is projected this year. This number assumes the transfers of existing residential properties and no transfers of commercial properties and larger tracts of land, which historically have occurred on an infrequent basis. As to expenditures, health insurance premiums will be kept at the level of that of 2023, which is a 10% increase from last year. This is made possible using the rate stabilization funds earned by the township's positive claims experience with the municipal nonprofit trust for health insurance to which we are a member. The budget includes an annual operating contribution to our volunteer fire department at $193,930 and retains a capital contribution in the amount of $172,000. This number does not include the cost of workers' compensation coverage that is provided by the township, as is required by state law, nor does this number include the Act 205 pass-through aid to the Department's Relief Association, which is budgeted at approximately $111,000. Lastly, the general fund will transfer dollars to the capital fund at the end of next year. This revenue will provide for needed capital projects. The transfer amount will continue to change and be refined in the coming weeks as we adjust the budget to reflect receipt and expenditure estimates, but at this time, it's projected to be around $973,000. At the top of the list is the annual road program for capital expenditures. The township will continue to provide an augmented resurfacing program, which will help keep our roads in good condition, maximizing the useful life of the network. The capital fund will provide $793,177 towards the road program, which, when coupled with dollars from our liquid fuels fund, will provide $1.15 million towards the road program in 2026. And remember, this doesn't include soft costs like design, bidding, and inspections, or the many smaller fixes made by our Public Works Department. The capital fund also funds a bridge repair and guide rail replacements, both on Green Hill Road. Also funded is the Weber Road pipe replacement and one large MS4 project. Some other capital improvements included in the budget for parks and trails include fence repairs at Sunnybrook Park and installing security cameras at Mount Kirk, Sunnybrook, and Hebner Park. Lastly, the capital fund will provide for the replacement of public works vehicles and equipment that have reached the end of their useful life, including the replacement of 2 pickup trucks and 1 mower. The capital budget also includes the purchase of a John Deere lawn mower and new blades for a mower. Additionally budgeted is a mobile aerial lift designed for versatility and ease of use. This new equipment not only streamlines our workflow, but also ensures that we can tackle projects with greater precision and effectiveness. For the sewer fund, as to sewer rates, the budget presently includes a 3.5% increase to residential rates in 2026, which translates to approximately $1.59 per month increase for each home on the township system. A 4% increase to commercial sewer rates is also proposed. Additionally, in 2026, the township plans to hire a wastewater engineer firm to complete a full review of the plants, pumping stations, and our infrastructure to assess their condition. As infrastructure ages and populations grow, it's essential to ensure that our wastewater treatment facilities can handle the increased demand. The sewer fund currently provides $81,000 for capital improvements throughout the coming year. Just like our roadway network, the sanitary sewer system requires regular upkeep to maximize the useful life. Some items included here are new blowers, UV bulbs, and new filters. For the liquid fuels fund, the estimated 2025 allocation was received earlier this month, a total of $350,022, and it's approximately 3.8% less than received this year. For many municipalities, the annual liquid fuels allocation is the annual road maintenance budget, but we do not assume that the liquid fuels allocation is adequate to meet our real road maintenance needs. As previously mentioned, we budget additional dollars in both general fund and capital fund to meet this obligation. We will therefore offset any decrease in the liquid fuels funding with additional dollars through the capital fund. As to next steps, This evening, the board will consider authorization to advertise the 2026 budget for the required 20-day public inspection period. The budget will be available at the Township Building, and the budget is also posted to our website for review. The board will then consider the 2026 budget for adoption at its December 17th business meeting.
Thank you, Nicole. Dan, is there anything more to add in this presentation, or can the rest wait till when we bring it up?
I think the rest can wait.
Sounds good. First item up on our agenda tonight is public comment. We do ask that you limit your public comment to 5 minutes. Does anybody have any public comment for the board this evening?
Rick, if I could speak first.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. I just like to thank you to the staff for all the years we've worked together. So, congratulations to Christine. A job well done. You know, I started here with my wife and 4 kids. I leave with a family of 20 now. So, it's been a long haul. So, I've been blessed over the years. And it's out of joy that I speak tonight, that living in Worcester, raising my children, and I've been blessed to be the boss of my 4 children, and also my 10 grandkids work for me. So Worcester's been a joy to live here and work here, and really to serve the people. It's out of happiness that I'm showing the emotion. I'm not going away, but after doing this for 18 years, you have a lot of memories of things you've done. And I hope, Christine, you'll feel the same when you're done, that it's a pleasure to serve the people of Worcester. And I guess I was touched by an old woman. I shouldn't say old anymore because I'm not young. That she came up to me the other day and said, "A job well done, a good and faithful servant." And that encapsulates the thing, that if that's what people think after so many years, it was a job well done. And to offer a little bit of levity to it, someone came up and also said, "My gosh, if the only thing you did to lose an election was not go to a chicken barbecue, man, you must have did a good job." To that point, I'll finish by saying that I do go to the chicken barbecue, and this year I think I bought 30 chickens for my family. So I don't think many other people bought 30 chickens to feed your family. And also, I was there 4 times or 5 times dropping ice cream off. So, you know, we have to laugh about politics is politics. You do what you have to do to get to the end line. But I've just been blessed working with the people here in the township. We have a great staff, and I thank you for all the years. Thank you. And once again, good luck, Christine.
Thank you, Steve. We have a proper send off for you next month. We have a
One other thing, the reason I said something tonight, well, first of all, to congratulate Christine, is I hope to be here next month, because my next job is to get a body overhaul. I have hip surgery scheduled for the meeting the day after the meeting. However, the way things go around Christmas time, the surgeon said he may move it up a day or 2. I told him I have to go to the township. I may not be available. He said, "Well, if you don't do it now, I'll see you in April." So if I have to make the choice of getting my hip done a week before Christmas or in April, I'll choose the week before Christmas. So
fair enough. Fair enough. But we will hope you will be
I hope it'll be here, but
we
just pre-warning.
duly noted. I certainly have enjoyed working with you as well. I know Lou has, but we certainly want to give you a proper send off. If you're having hip surgery, then we will certainly find some way to get that into our calendar.
I'll just read my bank account number. You just all the funds there.
All the donations to there. Fair enough. Does anybody have any public comment they wish to make at this time? Sir?
My name's Tim Creelman, Worcester. I just wonder if you can give us a brief update on the status of 1616 Whitehall Road as far as where the zoning stands now and whether or not they've appealed the zoning. Um,
Sure. So when you're going to hand that to you, we can give you a couple of updates on that because there's certainly this, both the determination, kind of where the appeal stands, and
Yes.
maybe you could also talk about the Attorney General situation as well.
Sure thing. So, as you're probably aware, there was hearings before the zoning hearing board. The last hearing was in October, and the zoning hearing board issued its written decision on, I believe it was October 27th or so, um, affirming the zoning officer's decision and basically denying the applicant's, the property owner's appeal. Um, that matter was, in fact, there was an appeal filed in the Court of Common Pleas by Mr. DePaul's attorney that was just submitted for filing late Friday afternoon and was accepted for filing just Monday, just 2 days ago. So my office has filed what's called a petition to intervene. We'll be continuing, obviously, to represent the township in that matter and pursue the townships and the residents' rights vigorously. So that's where that matter stands. Also, I'm not sure how much, if this has been something reported on as much in the public meeting, just because it was something that occurred. Mr. DePaul's attorney filed what's basically, it's a complaint to the Pennsylvania Attorney General's office that was submitted back in July, alleging essentially that the township's ordinances were an unrestricted regulation of farming. And my office, of course, submitted a response to that on behalf of the township. The Attorney General's office has denied that complaint. So what that means is the Attorney General will not be pursuing an action against the township under what's called the Acre Act. So that is where that stands. And there is the possibility that Mr. DePaul could, if he so choose, he has the ability to try to pursue an Acre Act in the Commonwealth Court. I can't predict whether or not that's something that he'll do, but that's essentially where things are at the present time.
Thank you. I have another question. It's kind of a parallel question. I know the 1616 is trying to get a stormwater permit because of the stormwater issues on the property. Could you briefly tell me where that stands, the permit? And
I think that's something maybe the manager.
Dan might be able to speak to that. And I don't know if that's directly with us, that's with DEP, is it not?
Correct. Yeah, so the stormwater aspect of it is generally handled by the Montgomery County Conservation District and Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. We have had some tertiary involvement with that. My understanding is there was some meetings between the owner and DEP as far as some penalties. I don't know what the end game has been on that. They do have an MPDES permit, which is essentially a stormwater permit. Anytime you add more than an acre of impervious coverage, you're required to get this permit. They have filed that. That has been accepted for review, and that review process will take some time. So that's kind of where that stands with DEP and the county.
does that permit come to the township? Will you or the planning commission at some point have to make a decision on that permit? Do you get involved at the end in either approving or disapproving that stormwater permit?
We do not have a role in approving that. We will certainly see it, we'll certainly review it, but that is a permit that is actually applied for and granted by the state.
And it's still on 1616. I'd like to thank the manager and the solicitor. I was at the zoning hearing. I think the whole thing was about 5 hours. And I appreciate the board really, staying on top of this. I thought the township was very well prepared, presented a very good case. And I appreciate the efforts of the manager and the solicitor and the board supporting the neighbors who front on this property or who are alongside this property. One thing the zoning board here, you said, and I don't know if it's an official opinion, after they heard it all out for 4 hours or so, they said verbally there was overwhelming evidence. It's not a farm, it's a construction site, basically, a construction yard. I don't know if that made it into the official opinion, but when the hearing wrapped up, immediately the chair of the zoning board made a statement that there's overwhelming evidence that isn't a farm by any stretch of imagination. It is a construction yard run by and used by DePaul Construction. I just wanted to make that.
Thank you, Tim. So certainly the written determination does articulate many of those points from the hearing. I don't know if that's been posted in any place. I know that we got a copy of it.
It is not posted, but it is public information. If you would like, I'm happy to email you a copy. I have done that on request for some of your neighbors. I can send it to you if you like.
Okay.
Do you have any recent photos of the property? I mean, have you sent a drone over this property lately? Do you have any drone photos or on-site photos? Because I suspect when you go back to court, one of the first things they're going to ask, you have recent photos of the property.
We do have up-to-date satellite imagery as of October 4th. I don't want to get into too many details, but we are working on obtaining new visuals of that if anything were to happen.
I think we can say we're continuing to monitor it, as I guess how we would articulate that.
Could you use drone photos? Would they be better than satellite photos?
That's something that we would, that's something I'd prefer not to comment on, frankly. It's a matter of litigation, so I don't really want to discuss litigation strategy.
I went by there today. It's worse than ever. Nothing's changed. I saw a new piece of equipment, looked like a crane type equipment with an auger on it, I guess, for putting telephone poles in the ground. I mean, nothing's changed. It's as bad or worse than ever, based on my firsthand observation today. It's all the same. And I guess my 5 minutes up, but I would ask the township to continue fighting this. I mean, the guy obviously, money's no object. He's dead wrong. It's an egregious, blatant violation of the zoning ordinances, but he's chosen to fight this now. It's going on 3 years. And I think I speak for my neighbors. We greatly appreciate the township fighting and to try to clean up this lot. And I don't suspect it's going to end anytime soon. So I would ask the township to continue to spend the resources and try to bring this into compliance with the zoning code.
Okay. Thank you, Tim. We appreciate the comments.
Rick, if I just follow up on that, I had the pleasure of sitting on the Conservation District for a number of years, and they're on top of everything. They have drones and all kinds of apparatus to check the properties out. So state-of-the-art materials there, and I think Dan alluded to the fact a number of months ago, when you start messing around with those government agencies, they don't really like it. So that's an issue. The issue you brought up about the crane, I'll address from an agricultural perspective, because I'm involved in a lot of state organizations, farming organizations. And it's very tough to tell what's a piece of agricultural equipment. I know you don't think a crane is a piece of agricultural equipment. However, this has been tried and tested across the state of Pennsylvania. Tree farmers, where I was at the other day looking at Christmas trees, they have cranes on their farm. Now, I know he's a totally different thing with beehives, and you can sit and shake your head there, but I'm telling you what happens across the state of Pennsylvania. If they can go into court and say that a crane's not an acceptable piece of agricultural equipment, I have to disagree with you. Farmers use cranes for different things. So I understand this is what the state looks at across the whole spectrum of the agricultural laws. So when you start picking rollers out and tractors and backhoes, we have to be careful, and that's why I said it's up to, we can't make the decisions. That's why you go to court. You may disagree with what I'm saying, but I'm just telling you, when you deal with farmers across the state of Pennsylvania, there's a lot of different pieces of apparatus that they use, and we had to be conscious of that. And the court has to be conscious of that because a good lawyer will come in and if you say a crane's not an acceptable piece of agricultural equipment, I'm not taking the fellow's side, but I know what happens in the ag community, not only in Pennsylvania, but across the country. So a lot of different material are being used.
It's tricky, and I think what you saw in the zoning hearing, the manner in which information was presented was very deliberate and very intentional and certainly came out favorably, and we're going to continue to defend the ordinance fully and completely, but it does, it's still a process. So,
During the zoning hearing, I think a testimony was made, there's 47 trees on that property. It's a charade, it's a hoax, it's not a tree farm. They put in a handful of trees and are pretending to be a tree farm, so they continue to park dozens of pieces of construction equipment. There's an 18-wheel flatbed truck on the grounds today, cranes, backhoes, front-end loaders, wheel loaders, big black drainage pipes, mountains of gravel.
understood,
It's a charade, and
understood.
The point well taken, but I'm going to use my girl Christine over there. That's why there's good lawyers like Christine. One side says something, the other side will disagree and picks a whole different point out. So that's why the township has done the
agree with
best
you.
job. It's
We're-
now before a judge. The judge will end up making the decisions.
Right.
It's not a board decision.
Thankfully, everything has come in on our side so far, so we're happy with that.
Right.
But Steve
It's
is,
gone as good as it could go so far for us.
so,
again, we appreciate you pursuing this, and I don't think it's going to end anytime soon.
fair enough.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Does anybody else wish to make public comment at this time? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to starting with official action items and our consent agenda. Does anybody wish to make any changes or removals to the current consent agenda?
Do not.
Fair enough. Then I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve consent agenda, September 17 workshop meeting minutes, October 15 business meeting minutes, treasurer's report and other monthly reports for October of 2025, and the bill payment for October of 2025 in the amount of $350,382.27.
And I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Moving down to the motion section. First item up is going to be a motion to approve a pay estimate number 2 in the amount of $817,368.90 to Heidelberg Materials Northeast LLC for the 2025 road paving program. Dan, is this you?
Yeah, I can quick jump in on this. So this is the second payment. There was already a first payment approved. Between the first and this second payment, the vast majority of the contract will be paid. There'll be a third and final, much smaller final payment after there's some striping left to do. There's a couple little things left to do. But CKS has reviewed. Ms. Fountain's here in the place of John today, if there's any questions specifically on the engineering side. But we've reviewed it, and Public Works and their engineers believe this is a fair payment, and it's ready to move forward.
So I'm going to actually, if you don't mind, come up so we can get you on a microphone, because I do have a couple of questions that I just want somebody from the engineer's office to articulate for the public record.
Sure, happy to.
If you could just do me a favor,
Sign in.
sign in,
Will do.
and I apologize, I did not introduce you at the beginning. I was not aware that sometimes the engineer gets the night off.
That's okay. I am Michelle Fountain, and I'm from CKS Engineers.
So, can you give us maybe at a very holistic standpoint what CKS has done in terms of the program itself and what you've signed off on, what remains, if anything? Like Dan had mentioned, there's some striping. If you could maybe confirm that all the paving work has been done, all the curb work is, all the meat of the project has been done from your perspective?
Sure, I'll do it a little globally, and if I misspeak, I'll ask the manager to correct me. We put together the contract documents and specifications for this year's road program based upon the Public Works Director, list of roads that need to be done, that we develop an estimate, and that is given to the township to approve. After it is approved, like I said, we put together a bid package, it goes out to bid, and those bids were reviewed by the township and approved. As the manager has said, this is the second cost estimate. The first estimate had been previously approved, and that value of work in that first estimate was $119,197. This estimate, we are recommending the payment in the amount of $817,368.90. Most of this work, which includes work on Crestline Drive, Hillside Circle, Long Meadow Road, Preble Circle, Quail Run, Stony Creek Road, Fire Road, Overhill Road, Bean Road, there was a repair on Bean Road, Cribel Mill Road, and East Mount Kirk Avenue as the base bid, and along 3 other roads for an alternate add-on. All of this work is done and has been inspected by the Public Works Department, except for the ADA ramps that were done. And I would agree that most of the work is done except for the line striping. So the amount of work remaining is that line striping and 5% retainage, which we hold until the total project is done.
Sure. So I believe there's a retainage of 5%. Are we comfortable that those dollars are adequate for the remaining work that needs to be done?
Do.
Okay, I can articulate as somebody who lives in Sunnybrook Estates, which was the bulk of the road program, that in fact, all the roads were paved and completed. And Dan and I had many conversations about that through the project for sure, as did many residents there. But I do physically can observe that the work was done, but would like to make sure the engineer concurs with me on that.
We do.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions for the engineer with regard to this payment or the road program in general?
Nope.
And I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the estimate of number 2 in the amount of $817,368.90 to Heidelberg Materials for the 2025 road program.
And I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion on the floor? Bob, you're all set. You can.
Bob Andor, Worcester. Simple, quick question. 2 payments. The first was 119,000. This one's 800 and some $1,000. What is the balance? So you talked about there's a 5% retainage and the balance is being held. What is that number approximately?
Dan, can you speak to that? The total budget, the total project was $1,029,000 and change. So 817 plus 100 and approximately 56,000, Bob. Thank you. Is there any additional public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Next up, we're going to have a discussion/motion to approve a sewage facilities planning module component 2 review for 3268 Barley Lane. So what do we got here, Dan?
This is very exciting. This is a sewage planning module for a addition to one of our residents' homes. As you may not be aware, the county and Department of Environmental Protection, oftentimes when there's an expansion of a house, they have to review the existing septic mound and make sure it's adequate for the additional square footage. In most cases, older mounds are found inadequate, but they do not want to force a resident to construct a new septic mound when their existing one is working. What they do make them do, however, is identify an alternative site where, if and when that existing septic system fails, they know there's another site on the land that they could potentially put a new correctly sized septic mound in the future. What this is to say is essentially it's a series of hoops that the planning commission and you as the board have to jump through, as the resident does, to review and approve essentially the concept of this, because the actual technical side is approved at the county side. All we're doing essentially is verifying that this is in compliance with our Act 537 plan. I don't want to go too much deeper into it because it's not my expertise. I'm sure Ms. Fountain could expound on that, the technical details a little bit more if there's questions.
Well, there's not questions per se, but I mean, there's clarification that we would probably want, Michelle, if you don't mind coming forward. Did this go before planning already? Could you just give us the timeline for what brought it to our table?
Yes, it did go through planning commission. It was it was recommended for approval, 5-0 at the planning commission. And this is the final step before they can do their final submission to the county and state.
Okay, and I'm going to ask you a couple questions on what Dan said, just so I make sure I understand correctly. So this is a planning module we have to submit for a maybe, a future maybe, and we ultimately don't even have a say in, like, the county will ultimately have to sign off on this, not us?
You are signing off on it because it is a revision to your official sewage facilities plan, which is the plan, it's a planning tool that is used by municipalities to say where your public sewer systems and your wastewater treatment plants are going to go and where your on-lot systems are going to go. This area is slated to have an on-lot system. It currently does. It is working, but the DEP and the county said we want a reserve area just in case it doesn't work, because they are adding an in-law suite to
Okay.
this existing house.
Gotcha. So they went and tested soils and did, I read through, again, it's riveting reading in the document, but reading through and making sure it perks and does the things that need to happen so that if this site has to be used, it meets the necessary requirements to do that.
Correct.
Okay.
Rick, a question. The Barley Lane lots, aren't they a little larger than most of the lots in the township?
Oh, that I wouldn't know, I'm sorry.
They're larger lots compared to, some
more
of the newer
land,
subdivisions,
lots.
certainly.
Right.
It definitely has enough room for.
So it had adequate space. I mean, the good news there is there's adequate space if it does become necessary to need it at some future time, but it does sound like a bit of a,
Right. I think it's sometimes the problem with these sewers, with these mounds, that there's not enough land or it could impede the neighbor's property in some way. But I think over those lots in that neighborhood are oversized, and I don't think it'd be a problem with any kind of sewage in the future.
gotcha.
This will add an additional equivalent dwelling unit or an additional EDU. And the good news is that the county health department thought that it was adequate enough to connect to the existing system. They didn't require them to build a new system now.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, if there's a bright spot, it's that they don't have to invest in the new system, even though there's a couple of extra headaches to try to put the paperwork through, if you will. Lou, any questions on the,
I've been informed. I think it's fine.
okay, I don't have anything additional. Steve, any more questions?
No problem.
You want to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve the sewage facility planning module component for the review of 3268 Barley Lane.
I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Michelle. Okay, next up, we have a discussion and then potentially a motion to approve the advertisement of the 2026 township budget. I got a couple of comments to make and then we'll kind of see what's what. So we've obviously had some presentations on the budget over the last few meetings. We've had an opportunity to discuss a variety of different items. I don't personally have any specific questions on the budget that's been presented to us in terms of the numbers, the projections for revenue, the projection for the expenses. I'm going to ask Dan in a minute to sort of highlight a couple of things, just generally speaking. But do either of you have specific questions or comments or input that you want to cover tonight before we consider any kind of a motion when it comes to the budget?
No, I have no comment. I just always thank the staff for the outstanding work they've done, preparing it, making it easy for the supervisors to look at the information, understand the information, and be able to vote on something that having full disclosure as to what's involved in it. So my hat's off to Nicole and the staff for being professionally um, astute in compiling the information. Sometimes we disagree on certain items, but I think overall the staff has done a good job getting the information over the course of the year to the supervisors so we can review the expenses during the course of the year and be able to make a sound decision on the spending for the following year. So thank you to the staff for the information.
Thank you, Steve. So Dan, you've covered this a little bit in some of the other meetings, but I was wondering if you could take the sort of two areas I guess I want to cover, generally speaking. One is um, any outlier expenses that we might be having, maybe from the capital projects perspective, or just some items in the simplest sense. As an example, we're allocating, an additional 80 or 90,000 for administrative salaries in the next year. It's a budgeted number because, I want to talk about staffing a little bit. We've earmarked potentially a staffing need there, and just maybe you could talk a little bit about just how our philosophy is with regard to the staffing and a budgeted number versus an actual number on some of those that might at first glance look like there's a jump in a number, and why is there a jump in the number? But also just, sort of philosophically, how we look at staffing. I think we had originally budgeted for a staff member this year and then didn't hire someone, so just maybe speak to that a little bit, and then I got a couple more little follow-up questions from that.
Sure, yeah. So in 2025, obviously this year, we do have a position budgeted, a clerical position. That was to some extent aspirational, as it was difficult for me to analyze fully what our capacity was going to be as I had just gotten here at the beginning of that process. We are right on the edge, frankly, of needing that additional administrative employee. We've hesitated to hire because I frankly don't want to do that until I can fully justify that that person's going to have a full workload, and we're close, but we're not quite there yet. That being said, I didn't want to remove the position from the budget because if things do ramp up from a land development standpoint, things along those lines, that extra administrative person is very quickly going to have a full workload and become necessary. And if we don't have it budgeted, then we're essentially either looking at an unbudgeted expense or waiting an entire year until the 2027 budget. So that's sort of the philosophy. If we can get through again this year without having to need that person, then great. We've quote unquote saved that money that's in the budget for the future. But it's more of a planning for the future type of thing at this point.
Dan, to your point, I'm not sure what the population growth is in Worcester in the past 5 years, but the staff in the office has gone down, I think, overall, as far as the number of employees. And we're servicing more of our customers being the residents of the township. So we're doing a little more with less staff. And, certainly the people of the township demand questions. It's just like coming here, the research that you folks put into these lawsuits, the time you have to spend dealing with the lawyers and the judges and the engineers involved in it, especially during this recent growth spurt in Worcester. I think, a credit to the managers and the staff for doing a good job with less people.
And to that, we're probably around 12 right now, I would guess, based off of the numbers and what we've kind of rolled into. We don't know what the future is going to look like. Nobody's quite sure what's going to happen here. There's always that is a shoe about the drop feeling, and I think it's been that way for a long time, and nobody can really do it. So within the budget outside of this, we're trying to do a lot of forward-thinking planning as far as open space planning, zoning and saldo, ordinance reviews, just trying to make sure we're getting potentially ahead of any sort of population growth here, and focusing on the core competencies of local government right now. The state funding is a little iffy. The federal funding is a little iffy. it's difficult to plan for what those grant availability is going to be, what liquid fuels is going to be, what's going to happen with any of this. So it's important that I think we focusing on our core responsibilities and doing those responsibilities as well as possible.
Yeah. One last thing, the staff is so important because once again, I said I'm involved in the agriculture community throughout the state of Pennsylvania, and open space has always been a big issue in Worcester to the people. I know in other parts of the state that open space land is now being challenged. There's no room for growth. So this is a situation, if you listen to the news, it's happening in New Jersey. There's court cases out there, and there's already in parts of Pennsylvania, developers starting to challenge this preserved open space. The taxpayers' money was used to preserve it. So I think the staff being on top of certain situations, being abreast of what's happening, and not having or being understaffed is really going to be important in the future. So I think the staffing issue is an important issue in Worcester.
Thank you, Steve. So, Dan, maybe you could also, one of the other items I wanted to sort of make sure we've talked about it previously was the wastewater study, or sort of, it's come up a couple of times in the past year, just holistically getting a good picture of where we are with our treatment facilities, both in the current state, future state, and we've specifically budgeted some money to look at that. Maybe you could talk a little bit more about that and what the intent and outcome of that potentially is.
I mean, ultimately, the goal, Rick, is to ensure that the system that we have, the public system that we have, is we're bringing enough revenue to keep the maintenance where it needs to be without having other residents who aren't on that public system being responsible to also contribute to it. So the goal really is to have an outside wastewater engineering firm that just does this type of engineering, that has no history whatsoever in Worcester, to come in completely blank and look at our entire system, all of our pumping stations, our wastewater treatment plants, and importantly, all of the connections, the thousands and thousands and thousands of feet of mains and pipes that are involved with that system, to ensure that going forward we are charging the proper amount to make sure this is self-sustaining. We don't end up in a position like so many municipalities with a wastewater treatment system that is under-maintained, and then you're backed into a corner and forced to sell for pennies on a dollar, and you don't make the money you should, and then the residents then have a private system, which is really a no-win for everybody. So that's kind of the goal. We have budgeted that money. The expectation is that it will be done in 2026.
Once again, when you talk about sewer, I urge Christine, when you go to the meetings in Hershey, it's so important to network with other supervisors throughout the state of Pennsylvania, so we're not reinventing the wheel. They have gone through this already, where you mentioned, Dan, about the sewers. Jim Garrity, our now deceased ex-solicitor for 30 years, had mentioned that it's coming to Worcester at some point. Jim didn't have a crystal ball as to when, but public sewers will be forced on Worcester based on DEP and the other situations that are out there, environmental hazards, with everybody having septic systems. And this is happening, once again, from talking to supervisors across the state of Pennsylvania at these meetings you should attend. You find out what's happening, and that it's being forced down these townships' throats, by either the sewer companies or the companies involved in financing these projects. It's all about money. You follow the money, no matter here in Worcester, but what the state is pushing, for whatever reason, it's trying to get off the septic systems, which most people in Worcester have. A lot of the old homes, I don't know where we're going to get the money to do that, but that's one of the things about guarding the budget, being astute about some of these decisions we make as a board where we spend money, because the sewer issue is going to be a big problem in the future as these septic systems fail. They don't want, as we're discussing, the person with oversized lot, there's a lot of older homes in Worcester that don't have extra room to put a septic system on. So these things have to come online sometime in the future. I don't know where or when, but it's coming. And I said, once again, Jim Garrity said that 6 or 8 years ago at one of our meetings. He said, folks, it'll change Worcester. And I hate to say that, but it's something, it's out there, just lurking. And it's soon something that I'm not sure if your board will be faced with it, but one of the boards in the near future will be faced with public sewering the township.
Right. Well, and certainly one of the things we want to do with this study is we have one of the appendices in the budget document, if you look through it, is we have a fund balance policy for capital reserves. So one of the things is the sewer fund, we look to maintain at least $1 million in capital reserve for those sorts of items. And part of the intent of this study is to make sure that's an adequate number, that that's the right number to have as a minimum number, and make sure that whatever those future expenses might be, that we're aligning to those in advance. So at least that's the effort that we're trying to do with that. But the idea being, look, the good news is we've been very fortunate as a community. It predates me by decades, and that earned income is our biggest revenue source, and it has been amazingly stable and static for many years, and allows us to wind up bringing in more revenue than we expend on an annual basis, which allows us to build a lot of reserves through the years. And certainly one of the things we want to make sure we do is we maintain those. So that's just one of the areas there. Lou, do you have any specific questions or areas or items you want to drill into on the budget? I know we discussed it a few times and had some dialogue on it, but certainly this is the opportunity if you have any.
I went over the budget with Dan today for about an hour, and we identified a few things that most of it was technical, where you just have to change a date that wasn't correct, or some other items I had. But again, the budget is an estimate. It's a projection. We may be over or above, or a lot of times we're over. So we have to do it before 20 days before the end of the year. So I guess we're going to have to advertise it as is and present it, and we're going to vote on it next month.
You good?
Budgets are always tough, but
Okay. And I will entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we approve the advertisement of the 26 Worcester Township budget as presented.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion on the floor? Bob?
Bob Vander, Worcester. I have a couple quick questions and then some comments. So specifically, there is a activity sewer budget capital improvements, $84,680. Can we get a general breakdown for what's included in that? Nicole said 3 or 4 things in her presentation that were included, so I'm just looking for a global understanding of what those are and what the value is.
And you want to take that? Go ahead.
Those are various maintenance items that are scheduled through our sewer operator, PUE. They make suggestions every year on capital projects that are short-term and what they would like to see in that budget. So there's some smaller pumps, there's some smaller blowers, and then a variety of maintenance items that we think reach the level of capital project.
Understand. Can you share what the value of those items are? I mean, Nicole mentioned 3 items, so I'm just curious what those 3 items are.
In here we have a filter sand replacement that was $1,800, blowers at $8,000, clean tanks at $10,000, UV bulbs $2,500, flow assessment charge at $11,580, continuing our annual televising program at $30,000, and then just money in there for other repairs and whatnot at $19,000.
And the blowers are for where?
The blowers are for the Valley Green Wastewater Treatment Center.
Great, thank you. In the budget, there is a general obligation bond
Yes,
and a schedule that goes with that. I'm assuming that's for the sewer?
that's correct.
And how was that? I, I was here, but I don't recall. How was that all put together? And who holds those bonds?
I don't know how to quite answer.
Are you
It
talking about?
predates me as well, Bob, to the original, it was 2013, if I remember correctly.
2016.
16, excuse me,
Okay.
but,
So it's $2.5 million. And
right,
at the time, there was a discussion as to the sewer needed $2.5 million. The township had in excess of $2.5 million. And there was discussion,
where they couldn't just write the check because they needed to do it. The sewer payers ultimately have to pay this.
understood. So I'm just curious if these bonds were issued by Worcester and the sewer is basically paying back the township, or I'm just trying to understand the semantics of that.
So you're talking about, you want to know how it works, or you want to know, because I can tell, I mean, what this is, this is the Hickory Hill sewer, special sewer assessment. So we're all clear what we're talking about. It's,
That's correct. So we're trying to figure out, so the bonds, the township got the bond, so the township's on the hook for the bond and the payments that are necessary to pay back the bond. But I think we're trying to
yeah,
get
it's the,
how the sewer fund is paying.
yeah, so ultimately what happened was when this was done, either they were given the option to pay up front that connection fee, which many people did. They were also offered a payment plan over time, which again, many people did. So ultimately, as we pay that and as people connect, we will continue to essentially reimburse the township for the monies that we've fronted on that project.
So we own the bonds, but ultimately the collections are coming through the various tapping fees and connection fees and
Understood.
is how,
I mean, there's two separate funds and certain number of people are doing that. I'm just trying to understand, did the township borrow the money or did the township issue bonds for those money and the sewer is reimbursing them?
I honestly don't know, Bob. I mean, we certainly can get that answer for you, but I don't know specifically how they worked, the mechanics of it. My understanding at the time I was in the audience is I thought that they purchased, they went out to the market and offered bonds, and that's how it worked, but I don't know specifically.
And specifically, just so we're clear, so it's not, it doesn't have to reimburse the general fund. That money comes back through the wastewater fund and then is paid back to this bond out of that wastewater fund. So there's no cross-fund.
I would assume that it was independent, so there wasn't any mixing of
You
money.
would have, yeah, and you would have needed bond. There was bond. They would have needed bond counsel at the time to work through all the legalities and details of a bond. We're required by law to have bond counsel at that point.
Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't recall back that far as to there was discussion that the township had the money, but they couldn't just give it to them. So I didn't know what
Correct.
the semantics of that were. I'll have to dig into that deeper. The other thing that we have significant expense on was purchase of Fisher Road, and it's my understanding that we did finance that project, correct?
Correct.
And so I'm curious to know how much we financed and what are the terms of the note? 10 years, 15 years, 30 years, 4%, 2%?
I don't know that we have that information, or do we? No, we can
I
share.
do. I do have that information. So that is a 20-year loan through People's Security. That's approximately 2%. We did do a study, a comprehensive study on that earlier this year, as I realized that it was kind of a thing, to make sure that it didn't just make more sense to just pay the thing out of our reserves. Right now, it does not. We're getting slightly over 4% on those reserves. So it's actually, right now, financially prudent to keep the loan, pay the 2%, and while we're making 4%. Now, that's an ongoing monitoring process because those rates change. So if it gets to the point where it looks like that value proposition isn't accurate anymore,
Right.
we'll potentially address it at that point. But for now, we're actually making 2% off of that money as opposed to we would maybe to pay that 2 million off directly.
And we have, I assume we have the ability to pay that off.
We do. It is not a bond or anything. It is a straight normal. It's essentially a normal bank loan, as you would get.
We had some different financing instruments at the time. I know, again, I don't remember exactly which ones, but we settled on the loan, just a straight loan on it as the easiest mechanism.
No, if you're making money, it makes sense. If you're losing money, it doesn't make sense. So it's just my
Fair enough.
understanding.
Rick, if I can just add something to it. Bob, if you remember back then, what happened, I think it was in 2004, 2006, the township was doing work over there, and they had an idea that some of the sewers were having problems. They didn't mention it to the neighbors. The neighbors started putting their own new sand mounds in. So the township came back and said, we have to sewer that area. And the residents were saying, why didn't you tell us? I just put $30,000 into a brand new sand mound, and they had problems with that. So there went the ongoing negotiations with the residents of the township, and the township said to sort of foot the bill, hold it in escrow, or whatever you want to call it, until the person made the payments or sold the house. And if they sold the house, they had to go back and pay the township back. So it was one of those things with not, the planning wasn't very good. And that's probably around the time Jim Garrity started making the comments about the sewer. That'll be a problem that'll haunt you when the people, you're asking the residents to hook up the public sewer now, when they've had essentially a sand mound for decades on their property. And sewer is always a big issue. So I think because the township got caught with their pants down at that time, they tried to bend over for the residents and really try to help them out. So it wasn't a financial burden, especially to those who just put the money into a sand mound. We're now coming and telling them, you got to hook up the public sewer, and it just wasn't acceptable.
Yeah, I do recall some of that. So in general, you pass this budget, as in every other budget. If the numbers are right or the numbers are wrong, it's my understanding that those numbers are locked in. Is that correct? By activity, specifically even by line item, that you don't have the discretion to move those numbers around later on. You'll either exceed a line item or you'll be under, correct? You don't have the ability to change those.
So when we agree on the budget number is the budget number. You are correct. And per line item, however it is presented and passed, those are baked, I guess is the adjective.
Yeah, no, that's my understanding as well.
Is mine as well. We were in agreement on that. So if we're both right, we're both right. And if I'm wrong, we're both wrong. I'm joking. I mean, that's my understanding, Bob. I don't mean to make light of it.
Correct. No, it's in the context that this is difficult to go through in the sense that I get that the budget is an estimate moving forward. But this data we utilize to kind of analyze where we're at. So within this budget and within our monthly review of the budget, those documents, those budget numbers in certain cases are changing. And it was my understanding that those were locked in stone. If you exceed a line item by 100% or $2, or
It should be reported as being exceeded. So I can tell you going
those
forward,
numbers are being modified.
Well-
And I don't know if they're being modified because of complacency or oversight or there's, I mean, I have a hard time believing that there's an intentional situation, because clearly there are other situations where we exceed it, but it's very difficult to continually go back and forth to try and check those numbers. Those should be locked in stone, and you move forward and what those are. So in general, from this budget standpoint, Lou makes a comment, yeah, we need to approve this. We have 20 days. We have to sign off on it. It's got to be done by the end of the year, et cetera. So the comment I've made before is giving us a detailed budget like we now have at the last minute, meaning within those 20 days, and then you have to approve it. We need to have this sooner so that we can comment on the factual mistakes that are in here and the documentation so that those changes can be made appropriately. So now you're going to approve a budget that has factually incorrect information in it, albeit most of it is past history. But All of those documents have to stay the same. So we never get an opportunity to correct those. And moving forward, in my opinion, we just need to do a lot better. We need to have the information sooner so we have an opportunity to review it. Um, it just, I'll make a comment. You were going to buy computers last year. You had $40,000 in the budget. You didn't buy them. I don't think you bought them because it doesn't show in the expenses to date that you've bought them. So you take that $40,000 and you put that in your piggy bank as part of your $1 million surplus every year. And now the budget for next year is $80,000. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Either you need the computers and buy them, or you don't need the computers, but you don't just keep modifying the numbers. So
So hold on. I'm going to stop you on that one item. And again, only because I have some. So when we budgeted the money in that particular case was a server that we thought we were going to need to buy this year. We were able to extend the existing server for another year. We were able to get another year of life on an existing server or sets of computers. So you are correct. And that money rolled over into this year's budget on that particular item. Again, I'm not I hear what you're saying, but there wasn't a game to it. It just we
No.
were able to get an additional
may have
year's life
additional-
on that particular one. Could be other.
they have additional information that I don't have. I'm only reading the stuff that's here.
Well,
When the
you're
verbiage is
right.
exactly the same, I can only make the assumption that it is the same equipment, same thing. You were going to buy a lift. You didn't buy the lift, I don't think, because you say you're going to buy a lift this year.
Right. And we talked about hiring someone and ultimately we didn't hire somebody, but we didn't expend the money. It wasn't, but I understand what you're saying, but it's not, there wasn't a bucket.
I understand.
We're not doubling the money. We're moving it and that process is problematic. I understand that both the concern and.
We're in the enviable position that our receipts far exceed our expenses year in and year out to the tune of $1 million. But misrepresenting the revenue that's coming in by underestimating it and overestimating what our expenses will be so that it looks like we have a balanced budget and at the end of the year we come up with the same $1 million every year. Right now, currently, we're projecting there'll be $670,000. That number keeps fluctuating, but as of the end of October, we project that that overage, that surplus will be $670,000. It's going to be $1 million. You're off by $300,000. And I don't even have to go through the individual line items. That's why I asked the question about the roads program.
Right.
Because we're now projecting what the original estimate was, 1.3 million. But the bottom line is, it's going to be roughly $1 million.
Oh, wound up being $1,029,000. You're right.
Correct. So there's 300 and some thousand dollars alone. That doesn't include any of the other line items that we're now projecting we're going to be at that number. So again, it's an enviable position to be in. Many townships don't have this luxury. The difficulty is it's not really good budgeting when we underestimate our revenue and we overestimate our costs. That doesn't do us any good to try to monitor and be sure that we're using our money fiscally responsibly.
Okay. Fair enough.
But Rick, to his point, it's a budget, and I think we all own businesses, and you budget things, and compressors go bad, truck engines go bad, harvest goes bad, the harvester blows down. We don't budget for those things, but I think there has to be some flexibility. I know you said being cast in stone, we're dealing with residents' money, but I think there has to be a little bit of flexibility. It's really hard to do a profit and loss statement and project things out from year to year. I don't know any business, and maybe I could be wrong, that is so entrenched in that budget that if something comes up, an extraordinary expense where they need, the computers blow up. If we have a surge in the computers and something's not covered, you need all new computers. I think there has to be some flexibility rather than getting down on the penny on or $1,000 or $10,000.
We're not even talking about that, Steve. I'm looking at big picture numbers.
I understand what you're saying, but it's just,
You have three major consultants. You have legal, you have engineering, and you have an auditor. Every year, you're off on the budget, not by $10,000. At some point in time, where do you say, I'm going to take what I spent before? Why do you keep underestimating that and think that it's going to happen? I mean, that's just,
you try to be a realist, I guess. Once again, we'll go with the property down here on Whitehall Road. We had no idea that that's going to be an ongoing problem. And nothing against the lawyers in the room, but they like to be paid as well for their services. Unless we employ them to do the research and go to court, we'll lose. The same with every other project comes into the township. Lawyers' fees are pretty tough to do, but to the township's credit, we used to pay the solicitor close to $400,000 a year, as you brought up, but the legal bills and things. I'm not even sure what we pay anymore, but it's a hell of a lot cheaper than I used to because the township manager's taking responsibility on to do more of that work, the legwork, rather than depending on the legal service. I know it's just an example, but I understand what you're saying, but being in business is certainly tough to budget things. I understand from you sitting out there, but I guess sitting up here, I look at things a little bit differently. And I guess to that point, I'm happy I'm moving on, that I don't have to justify the decisions of the township, trying to be astute with the township's money. And when you certainly run a business, it's tough to be budgeted in that box, especially with fees for the engineer. The people in Worcester want us to fight these issues that come up. And fighting these issues costs a lot of money. And if we don't fight them, we roll over on the Palmer property. You know, luckily, there's an outside group of people providing some money to fight that project on their own. God bless them. But it's costing them a heck of a lot of money, and it's costing a township a heck of a lot of money to make those adjustments. So I personally don't have a problem with the budgetary system. We're very fortunate, as you said, that we have the extra money which other townships don't do. I think to the staff's credit, you can only budget. That's why a budget's a budget. You know, my wife, I give her a budget, forget about it. You know, it never comes within the same sphere. I know we're talking apples and oranges, but the simplicity of the item, you have to roll with the punches sometimes. So
rolling with the punches is every year. Anybody can do a budget when you have an extra $1 million of surplus. We're not modifying those things. We're not learning from our mistakes. We're not correcting for those types of things.
Well,
And
fair enough. It's your public comment, Bob, and I certainly appreciate it.
I understand your point,
I
Bob.
understand
It's well
you guys are
taken.
going to approve it regardless, saying it's moving forward into the future. That's all we're looking at. It doesn't matter. You're fortunate that you have that extra money because if you didn't and you really had to watch your money, it would be a much more difficult situation.
And one last thing to your point, as I brought up before, I know we're not perfect here, but I have problems as a taxpayer when I go to the school district and they budget for $10 million, they come back and say it's $85 million. You sit and scratch your head and say, where's all the people complaining about this? It's just, I just can't comprehend how you can spend taxpayers' money so easily.
Does anybody else wish to make public comment regarding the motion on the floor? Jim?
Jim Malik, Worcester. Don't you remember the Jim Malik 2-minute rule we used to have here?
I do.
So I must say,
Do. You can have as much time as you need.
I must say, you guys have been very fair and very accommodating compared to what I was used to. Number one, Steve, your memory is correct about the sewer situation because I was there for all those meetings too. To the best of my knowledge, I don't think the township can issue bonds. I think financial institutions issue bonds. And in the sewer situation, I think I remember the financial institution and the bond council being here to issue the bonds. So I think that's clarification to that point. The question really is, where does your revenue come from? Really doesn't come from the lowest tax rate in Montgomery County. How much more can you lower your tax rate? point what, oh one something mil?
What's the mill?
It's .05 brings in approximately $55,000 a
Yeah,
year.
0.05 mil.
Correct.
You know, I mean, that's not your revenue source. Your revenue source is the 0.5% earned income tax that the school district collects by law. So your revenue is pretty much the same every year, not because of what you're doing, it's what they're doing. And they're sending you 3 point whatever million dollars in earned income tax revenue. Okay? So regardless of your budgetary situation, the revenue is pretty much the same every year and it's out of your control. And if I'm wrong, correct me, but I have a long history with budgets. So you're not going to change the revenue. The only thing you can change is how you spend the revenue. So, for instance, your server situation, you save the taxpayers 1 year of not having to buy a new server. That's good, to me, that's a good thing, okay? Anybody up here remember the secret Dave Markle Fund? I'm serious. Do you remember? The secret Dave Markle Fund, money coming into the township that was hidden. I came to a township meeting and asked John Harris and he wouldn't tell me. What was it? 50 grand?
50 grand a year.
50 grand a year coming in that you can't really find in the budget? Now, to me, that's a real problem, right?
Yep.
The hidden Dave Markle Fund. And that was for years. What was it, 10 years? 7? Whatever. So, as far as your budgetary situation goes, last year and into this year, did you budget a certain amount for your legal fees?
Yes.
Did you anticipate having to utilize your attorney for extended periods of time to fight this zoning case when you passed your budget last year?
So the short answer is no, not to all of the legal situations we would have run into. We certainly earmarked for some of them because they were ongoing, but there certainly were some that came up that we did not anticipate.
Right. And
Well, we spent the money.
right. So that's how it works. You know, at least when you guys budget, we end up with $1 million surplus. I've been experiencing a budget over at the school district where they just taxed us 5%, gave us a 5% tax increase. So we have the lowest rate in Montgomery County. You guys are not really, from what I see in this budget, not like missing by a lot. I mean, a server, okay, I get it. But there's things you cannot anticipate in your budget. So what happens? Either you spend a little more or you spend a little less. And in this situation, you're being criticized for spending less. Well, doesn't really matter because all that money, regardless of whether you spend more or less, whatever's left over is going into the capital reserve fund, right? And how much is in that capital reserve fund?
Approximately $17 million.
$17 million. And that's not because of your budgetary problem. Some people would suggest, well, you got all that money, you got these, spend more money. No, that's not it. You do stuff like, hey, you know what, we're not going to hire that full-time person until we need him and can justify him. See, that is somebody thinking about the budget, right? That's the point I'm trying to make. You got 17 million in the bank. How'd you get 17 in the million bank? Were you guys spending money you didn't need to spend to get to 17 million? No. And you got the lowest tax rate in Montgomery County. I don't really understand the concern about your budgetary surplus. How much is in the sewer capital reserve fund?
Do you have that number, Dan? It's north of $1 million, but I don't want to.
$1 million. You remember what it was, Steve, back in the day? Back in the good old days? What was it? You remember what it was?
It was zero.
Yep.
Zero.
So we
$0.
weren't charging people. Right.
in the capital reserve fund. And then the problems associated with that ensued when it was time to upgrade facilities. Okay? Well, you got somebody's doing a good job. You got $1 million in the capital reserve. Doesn't sound like you're raising the rates all that much. So, I say good job. How much we got in the Nike fund?
Give me a second. I have it.
I think it's 900,000.
Right, 900 grand. In anticipation of the government doing what they should do and clean the place up, which they haven't done yet. That's not your fault, but you're not going to expend that money until the government comes in and cleans up a toxic site, right?
Correct.
So that you work that into your budgetary thoughts for, hey, you know what, we may need to do something there, whatever it may be. You don't just wait until it happens, and then all of a sudden, oh, boom, we need 900 grand. You anticipate, hey, stuff doesn't work out. Government's dragging their feet. Government doesn't want to do their thing. So, I think, again, a good job on that. And also, I've been going to township meetings forever, school board meetings forever. I've never heard of anybody complain about government not spending money. Because what happens is when government gets extra money, they almost always spend it, except for here. This is crazy place. You guys got 17 million in the bank. Most people I know, maybe the school district as well, you give them 17 million, I'd buy. They'll find a way to spend it. So I call that fiscal restraint. And the other thing I enjoy here that I really didn't see anywhere else was you reconcile your budgets. So remember back in the good old days, Steve, nobody reconciled anything. They gave you the budget, the projection, and then when the actual numbers came in, there was no reconciliation. Right?
No, you'd ask a question and they would say, we're not answering it.
Well, and there's another good point. I'll save that for public. Well, is this public comment? No, I'll save that for public comment. So, very good presentation by Nicole. Very, because normally I go to sleep on those kind of presentations. Succinct, to the point. Dan knows what he's doing. You guys, I commend on the 17 million in the bank, the $1 million every year, and you've resisted the temptation to spend it.
Thank you, Jim. Is there any additional public comment regarding the motion that is on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Next up, we got other business. Does anybody have any other business they wish to bring before the board tonight? I do not.
Do not.
Okay. One more last of public comment. If anybody else would like to make any additional public comment to the board, the floor is now open. Jim? Okay.
Jim, it's been fun. I'll say that over all the years. It's just a lot of interesting things happened in this room. And
Certainly.
you know what? You've got a bad name from a lot of people, but you brought a lot of light to a lot of things in this township. From people spending millions of dollars that wasn't authorized and educating me that you can't vote on that. The non-agenda item, that how can you spend $1 million on something? So on behalf of the residents that you saved a lot of money, I know a lot of people think you're an annoying pain in the ass. Rightfully so.
And
but
again, I wouldn't argue with that. So
I'm glad you realize that, but to you, I think on behalf of the taxpayers, a job well done.
Well, thank you. And the same back at you, Steve. Your class act, and I know personally and from here, that your prime concern the whole time you were here was the residents of Worcester Township. Not you, the residents of Worcester Township. And I talked to almost 1,000 of them. And almost universally, they raved about the family, the business, your performance. I did hear a couple things that were disturbing, which may have to be dealt with. But I got to say, you had a good run.
It's been a good ride, and the people in Worcester are good people.
Yeah, I know you're not. I know you're not. Well, one of the things I heard on the campaign trail was there's a lack of transparency up there. And I was like, are you freaking kidding me? A lack of transparency at these meetings? You just saw a transparent, as transparent as can be. Okay? You guys, every meeting is videotaped, and everybody can watch it anytime they want. You don't strictly enforce a time limit. I mean, we have a 5-minute rule. I would never know it. You answer everybody's questions, and you take painstaking efforts to do so. You engage in a dialogue back and forth, which the way it should be, but it's not. You streamline your right to know process. The school district spent $1 million on lawyers trying to keep information out of my hands. They got beat by me anyway, right? And they had to settle, right? But $1 million. How much did you spend on right to know last year?
$961.
And
You're
there,
asking the wrong question.
what?
What did you use to cost the township on right to know? That's a better.
Yeah, yeah. I, but, well, that problem got taken care of. It was a problem, but then it got taken care of. But $2,000 for right to know. They spent in 1 year $1 million. Okay? Now, that lawyer is gone. They got a new lawyer, and now they're spending 10 grand a month, something like that. So, this has to be, and I say this, with all due respect, probably one of the most transparent boards and transparent townships in Montgomery County. Go to Lower Providence, try to do any of this back and forth? Questions? No. Go to the school board, I'd be done by now. 3 minutes. As soon as you hit the clock, it goes off 3 minutes, you're done. You're done. So sometimes people take for granted how good things are here, how good things have been here. So, my thing moving forward, I think I'm going to start coming back to meetings. I kind of miss it.
Well, Jim, to your point, I think we all sat there, Lou, Rick, and I all sat out there at a time in the township, to your point, asking questions and not being answered. And said, wait, I'm a resident.
Yeah.
You have to answer my question. I think because we all experienced that.
Yeah.
We had feelings, and that's really why I got involved, was the transparency issue. You want to come and ask a question, especially the millions of dollars on these real estate deals, as we found out somebody involved was getting kickbacks. It's like, really? And just ask those questions.
Yeah.
That's why they wouldn't answer the question. But we have no dog in this fight. We just sit there as residents trying to help our neighbors out. That's all.
Well, if you remember, before Rick was here and we had other people on the board with you, we couldn't give comments about the budget when it came time for advertisement, because I was told, I tried to make comments. They would say, well, this is just advertisement of the budget. This is not the time for questions. That just gives you an example of what things used to be like and what they are now. I mean, I strongly suggest, go to a school board meeting and try asking some questions and see what happens. You get no answers and you get cut off. So, well done. Well done. I'll be up there for banana milkshake.
Thank you, Jim. Anybody else wish to make public comment at this time? Ed, you good? Okay, seeing none, motion to adjourn. Thank you all for coming.